Hi, Danielle here. So today in this video, I am going to discuss a tool that we as practitioners and teachers often use to help our students when we are teaching them a new skill and we are trying to help them along with that skill acquisition. And that tool is referred to as prompting. Prompting is something that we use, and oftentimes with prompting, we utilize what is known as a prompt hierarchy. And so in today's video, I'm going to discuss prompting. I'm going to teach 6 different types of prompts that we use, and I'm going to review and define what a prompt hierarchy is. So let's get started. A prompt is an aid that helps a person. It could be a learner, it could be just a person in everyday life that is just not picking up on what's happening in their environment. A prompt is something that helps someone respond in a certain way or in a way that is expected when they kind of fail to pick up on the cues around them that a certain behavior is expected. So what does this look like? Here's an example. Let's say you're driving in the car and you and your friend or you and your significant other are both in the car together, and you're in the passenger seat and the other person is driving. You pull up to a stoplight. The light is green, or the light is red. And for whatever reason, you both are sitting there waiting for the light to turn green. But when the light turns green, the driver has either zoned out or isn't paying attention. And so at the signal of the green light, when driving behavior is expected and they're expected to start driving, they're still sitting at the light. So you're sitting in the passenger seat because you see that the light is green and you know once the light turns green, that's when we go, but they're not going. So you say, go. And all of a sudden, after you say that, they kind of come out of the slumber wherever they were and they go, oh, well, I guess I probably better go because the light's green. What you've just done is provided a verbal prompt. Okay, so let's talk about why prompts are important. In the previous example, that verbal prompt to go at the green signal on the traffic light was important because it did a couple things. It helped the driver not to back up traffic, to help them to get to their destination at a reasonable time. It probably prevented other drivers from being mad at them for, holding up traffic because maybe somebody else had to get somewhere in a hurry. So the verbal prompt was important because it sort of jump-started a behavior that was needed and necessary and needed to be implemented. When you're dealing with individuals who are learning a new skill, and this is learning a new skill whether or not they have autism or another intellectual disability or whether they don't, there are tons of people who rely, or not maybe rely, but at times prompts are necessary to remind them or to jumpstart a behavior that they need to engage in, maybe to complete a task or something. But when you're dealing with teaching anyone something or trying to signal to someone that something needs to be done, the prompt is important because it sort of helps either to jumpstart the behavior or it helps to carry out the behavior to completion. And that's basically why it's important. Now, as teachers and practitioners, particularly if we're working in the field of autism or we're working with individuals who have developmental disabilities, our challenge and our goal is to make sure that our learners learn the skill to proficiency, but also that we do our best to reduce the prompt dependency that is always a threat into developing. And so what we want to do is we want to make sure that we transfer, because remember, the reason that we use prompts is because we're either teaching a new skill, helping a new skill to follow through with completion, and that is usually because something in the environment that should be cueing a certain behavior to occur is not happening. So, like the light. It turned green, but the behavior to drive wasn't happening. Or maybe you have a client who needs to learn how to hang their coat up, and seeing other kids hang their coat up or walking into the classroom is not signaling to them that they need to hang up their coat. So they might walk right from the door to their seat with their coat on because they missed the social cue, or they missed the cue that, okay, this is the next step, I need to hang up my coat. And another reason sometimes that we use prompts is simply because it's a method of teaching that helps the learner to gain the skill from the get. And that's known as errorless learning. We don't want to give them an opportunity to do the wrong thing, so we begin prompting them immediately so that they're able to do the right thing. So those are some instances in where we use prompts and where prompts become important. And the challenge for practitioners is that we somehow help the client and the learner to transition from our prompts to the naturally occurring stimuli, so that they can engage in the behavior when they see the cue in the environment that the behavior is supposed to occur. All right, so how do we use the prompt? I'm going to cover how we use the prompt, teach you how to use the prompt, and then we'll go over the prompt hierarchy. So how do you use prompting? Well, you would, in a given situation where you are teaching a student or teaching a client to engage in a behavior, or to start engaging in a skill, you are going to start by delivering, or start by giving them a cue. Remember, for whatever reason, they may not pick up on the cue in the environment, so you are going to create, a lot of times it's a verbal cue or a verbal instruction, and that might be called the SD, but it's just a verbal instruction. So you are going to say, let's say, we'll go back to the example of picking up a pencil, or we'll go to the example of pulling out their pencil and getting ready to do math work. So you are going to say, pick up your pencil, okay? And then after you deliver that directive or instruction, verbal instruction, you're going to give them a few seconds to either engage in the behavior of picking up the pencil, or you're going to see whether they engage in the behavior of picking up the pencil or not. And you're going to wait to see what they do. If you determine that your client, if you can see that your client has either not engaged in the behavior, you are going to provide a prompt. So you're going to deliver the instruction, pick up the pencil, and then you're going to wait to see what they do. If they don't engage in picking up the pencil, you are going to repeat that process of delivering the SD, but you are going to add a prompt to it. So that might look like this. Pick up the pencil. They don't pick up the pencil. Pick up the pencil. And what I just demonstrated to you was a gestural prompt. So it's going to usually follow this sequence. Deliver the SD, wait for the response. If you need to move to a prompt because the client doesn't do it independently, you're going to re-deliver the SD with a prompt. If they don't respond to that prompt that you give them, you are going to either move up the prompt hierarchy, which we'll go over, or you're going to move down the prompt hierarchy when you re-deliver the SD and move to the next prompt. And that's the sequence of how you're going to use prompting. It is very likely that you will record or identify what prompt level that they responded, whether it was a gestural prompt, a verbal prompt, a partial partial prompt, physical prompt, or a full physical prompt. And oftentimes you will likely start there and then start reducing the prompts that you're using to move them to independence. The whole goal of using prompts is to, like I said, it's a tool, but the use of the tool is to steer the learner toward independence. And your whole goal is to transfer them from relying on your direct instruction to relying on the cue and the environment that the behavior needs to start to occur. Okay, so I referred to the prompt hierarchy, and this is something that we often use when we are teaching clients and we're using prompts. It's a prompt hierarchy, and teachers and practitioners will go up and down this prompt hierarchy. A lot of times we refer to it as least to most prompting or most to least prompting, but basically what that is, it just refers to the use of this prompt hierarchy and the method of prompting that we're going to use when we're trying to teach a skill. Okay, so this prompt hierarchy, it includes 6 different types of prompts, and I'm going to go over them with you. So the 6 different types of prompts are right here. You can see them. The prompts include visual prompts, verbal prompts, gestural prompts, full physical prompts, partial physical prompts, and modeling. Okay, or modeling, and that's just when you demonstrate how to do it. And if you'll notice at the top of this visual, we have independent, and that's really where we want our clients to be. We want them to be able to do something independently, and so the prompt doesn't start until you actually get to the second or the visual section. So from visual all the way down to full physical, that's actually the prompt hierarchy with the goal of independence at the top. Okay, so if you're going to use a full physical prompt, what this is it is a prompt where you are actually following through and guiding the client or the student to complete that action or to start that sequence. You're doing it almost with them. You're doing it with them completely. A lot of times you might hear this referred to as hand over hand. And what that means is that if I tell a student to pick up a pencil and they don't pick up the pencil at the cue of my instruction, I am going to put my hand directly over their hand and I'm going to pick up the pencil. And that is what a full physical prompt is. Next, we have what is referred to as a partial physical prompt. And a partial physical prompt is a type of prompt that's not full physical. You're not doing it hand over hand with them, but you are partially prompting them. So a partial prompt might start maybe at the wrist, it might start at the elbow. And so let's use the same example where you say, pick up the pencil, and the student at your verbal instruction does not pick up the pencil. And so you provide a partial physical prompt. You might slightly touch their elbow or, slightly move their wrist over to where the pencil is, and then they complete the rest. But that partial prompt is sort of moving them, partially engaging with them so that they can complete the task. The next level up is modeling, and this is simply when you become a model. Okay, you model the behavior that you want them to see. So a lot of times we're all familiar with models. We may not realize it, but we're familiar with models, and this usually occurs when you'll say something like "do this" or "copy me" or "do it like me," and so you become the model for what they're to do. So in the same instance, let's say the same example of picking up the pencil, you might say in front of your student, "pick up the pencil," and they don't pick the pencil up. So you say, and so you go and pick up the pencil, and you might say like this, "do it like me," and you put it back down, and then you instruct them again, "pick up the pencil." And if that student is able to respond to your model prompt, they'll pick up the pencil after they've seen you do it. The next thing is a gestural prompt, and we use this a lot, probably without knowing that we're doing it. And the way that you use a gestural prompt is you simply gesture that you want a certain behavior to start occurring. So same example with the pencil, except now when you say "pick up the pencil," you point to it. You're not hand over handing them. You're not partially moving their body or limb over to what it is that you want them to do. You're not modeling for them. You're not picking up the pencil, but now you're just gesturing, pointing, "pick up the pencil." And that's a gestural prompt. And if the student responds to gestural prompts, then they'll pick up the pencil. Pick up the pencil, point. The next is a verbal prompt. And if you're anything like me, you talk. And so verbal prompts are just that. We'll go back to the example of driving in the car and stopping at the green light and being stopped at the green light. Saying "go" is a verbal prompt. You have verbally prompted them to start engaging in the behavior. And if, again, your student responds to verbal prompts after hearing you say "pick up the pencil," they'll pick up the pencil at your instruction. The last thing is a visual prompt. And this is just simply a visual of what needs to be done. So let's say that you have a client, and we'll go back to the example of the pencil, picking up the pencil. So let's say you have a client or a student, and they respond to visual prompts, or they need visual prompts. And so let's say, for example, you're in the school setting and you're sitting next to the student, and it's time for them to pick up or to start doing their work. And, they don't pick up on the cue in the environment that it's time for them to start. So all the other kids are whipping out their school supplies, and they're whipping out their pencils because maybe it's time to do math. And your student or learner hasn't picked up on the signal that it's math time. So you might whip out sort of like a cue card, or maybe a cutout of a picture, and you might just put it right in front of the. So you might just take that pencil card or whatever visual that you're using, and just sort of place it maybe on the desk, or place it in front of the student, and that serves as a visual prompt that it's time for them to, whip out their pencils and start their math. Okay, so this is the end of my training video on how to use prompts and the prompt hierarchy. I hope that you find it useful. I hope it's helpful, and I hope that it can be a useful resource in case you need to review, or maybe introduce someone else to this tool that we often use when we're trying to teach learners new skills. Okay, thanks. Bye. Hello, Danielle here. So after I finished recording, oops. the video about prompting, and I realized that I did not thoroughly or explain what a prompt hierarchy was. And so my apologies for that. So I hope you can tune into this video so that you can actually learn what it is I said I was going to tell you and explain and define it, and I never did. So what is the prompt hierarchy? It is sort of a guide. When we are teaching clients new skills or students new skills, it's basically a guide that we can follow. And what it does is it goes, if you remember the visual, at the very, very top is independent. And that's what we're aiming for. We're aiming for when a cue is given that the learner begins to engage in the behavior that we've been teaching them independently. That's the goal. But starting all the way from the top where we have visual to everything in between to the bottom where we have full physical, those different types of prompts serve as a guide, and that's what the hierarchy is. It's a guide. And if you'll notice, the hierarchy moves from the very bottom where the base is. If you're moving from the bottom up, the hierarchy moves from the most intrusive prompt level, which is the hand over hand, to the least intrusive prompt level, which is a visual prompt. So it goes from most intrusive to least intrusive. And if you are following a prompt schedule or a prompt sequence that is titled the most to the least prompt prompting method, or the most to the least prompt sequence, what that's telling you is that you're going to go from the most intrusive prompt level to the least intrusive prompt level. And that's how you're going to teach the student. If you're going from the least to the most prompt sequence, then that means that you're going to actually probably start at the top of the hierarchy, or wherever the learner picks up on the cue that you're wanting them to engage in the behavior. You're going to start from the least intrusive prompt level and go down to the most intrusive prompt level. So what does that look like? Let's say that you have a learner that let's go back to the pick up the pencil. So let's say that you have a learner who is learning how to pick up their pencil when it's time to do their math work in their class. And you have been given the direction to use a least to most prompt sequence with this student. So what you would do then, you would go through, if you haven't been given a place to start, because sometimes when a prompt sequence is implemented or is designed, they may not necessarily start at visual and then go down to gestural and then go down to or verbal and then go down. It may not necessarily start there. That prompt hierarchy sequence can easily be started at a gestural level. And so if the person who has designed this instruction procedure or protocol for the student, if they've decided that they want to start, instead of at the visual level, they want to start prompting at the gestural level, and you are being instructed to go from a least to the most, then you would start with the gesture. And then you would move down. If the client or the learner doesn't pick up on the gestural prompt, you would move down to the model prompt. And then if they didn't pick up on the model prompt, you would move down to the partial physical prompt until you get all the way to full physical. Now let's flip that and say that the person who has designed this learning protocol has decided that instead of starting with the least intrusive prompt, they want to start with the most intrusive prompt. And so they're wanting you to start with the most to least. In this sequence, you would start with a hand over hand. And then you would move from a hand over hand to a partial. And then from a partial to a model. And then from a model to a gestural. And so that's just the way that the prompt hierarchy works as a guide. And that is how it's used. And that is how a least to most or most to least prompt sequence works and is designed to work. I'm not going to get into fading prompts because that's not what this video is about. But I just wanted to come back and clarify that for you because I didn't do it. And I said that I would. So there you go.